Deep down in the depths of the World Wide Web lies a parlor of peace, positivity, and a little pinch of enchantment. It's a place where you can kick back and have fun, back to a time when TV was magical. Close your eyes and you'll find your way there. You've made it. Welcome to TN Telly. And now that crazy singing Zen priestess cat lady cook, the Willy Wonka to your Charlie, come on in and say hello to Maria.
Well, hey, everybody. It is good to see you. Good to be here. Thank you so much for joining me. I apologize for missing last week's show. But here I am today. So thank you for those who showed up. And also, I did see, luckily, that there were some comments in there while you were waiting for me. And Curtis became the new taco cat of TN Telly. And so thank you very much for that. Thank you so much. The Taco Cat is a member, by the way. So when you become a member of the channel, you become a Taco Cat. So thank you so much for that. And my apologies again. Anyway, very excited to start the show today. I'm going to start it because we always have lots to talk about. Thank you so much for being here. And let me bring on my co-host here. And my apologies, everybody. I am still getting my speech back and my voice. So bear with me 1 second. And bring on the lovely Netter of Netters Network here, who's also my operations manager for TN Telly. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I didn't test my sound before we came on. And if I happen to disappear, my internet's being weird. So if I disappear, it's my internet.
That's all right. I was having some technical issues too. The latest drive came out, and so it sometimes can reboot for me. So if it bounces me out, I will be back. So bear with me, people. But thank you so much for being here. And I want to say hi to everybody here real quick before I bring on my guests. Since Hi, Mombi, thank you. And Angular, thank you. And PJ is in here as well. And again, Curtis, my new Taco Cat member, Dr. O backstage here, handling all the whats and nots and whatnots and whistles in the back for me. So thank you, Taylor Swift's Greater Than Disney. Thank you, long name, but I somehow got it out. My trusty wrench, Alicia, thank you for being here. I'm doing this without my glasses. Wow. Connie, thank you so much for bouncing in here. Good to see you. Thank you so much. Bonzo, thank you for being here. We're filling up quickly. So there's a third half here. Troy here of Last Call, Rod Thunderheart. And thank you all. Let me bring on my guest here. So lovely to see you all. Thank you so much. And my guest here is we had on for our part 1, and now we're here to do part 2 of our Marilyn Monroe talks. We had a lot to talk about, so let me just bring them in here and get started. So thank you so much, Kamran Pasha, for joining me for part 2. This is going to be exciting as well.
It's delightful to be on. It's wonderful to see you, Maria. It's wonderful to see you, Netter. And I've been following the chat, so it's great to see everyone that's in the chat. Some of my Patreon friends are here.
Awesome.
Always good to
The more
see
the merrier.
Yeah, I think we're going to get busy later, as I did advertise this stream as it did last time. So, isn't that cool? My television mug here is displaying the TV, so it kind of looks interesting. Anyway,
Okay, that's cool. I like that mug.
Anyway, so last time you'll have to catch it if you didn't. For those who hadn't seen it, we've got part 1. We talked a lot about the the script and other awesome things about the relationship. And look at that, like a ghost, she just disappeared. That was scary. And this time we're going to dive a little bit more into a few more things that are, I'm kind of anxious to see this. We're going to be talking about, well, I'll let you get there. Let's start off with Cameron first and see where you want to start off with this before I just divulge everything.
Well, for those who missed the last one or just would like a reminder, we're doing a couple of sessions here talking specifically about Marilyn Monroe, or actually Dougherty, who she really was beneath the image of Marilyn Monroe. And the last session we did, we talked a lot about certain conversations I had with psychics. And I think do we have a little feedback? Is it coming from me? Forgive me if it's coming from me. I don't think it's me. Do we have a feedback loop? No.
Let me turn down my volume a little bit. It might be me.
Okay. Yeah, mine is muted. My YouTube on the side is muted. Okay, so last month when we talked, we spoke about the some paranormal issues around psychics and mediums that I'd consulted with. The reason I've consulted with psychics and mediums about Marilyn Monroe is that Maria knows I've written a new screenplay that I intend to direct in the near future, God willing, about young Marilyn before she was discovered, when she was Norma Jean Dougherty and her first husband. Story of her life that has been erased from history, erased from Hollywood, erased from the fans' consciousness, because it doesn't fit a lot of the projections that we have of her and the stories we want to tell about her, which is really unfair to her. It is unfair to him. It is unfair to a very important part of history. And so I've written the script, and a lot of bizarro synchronicities and strange things happen throughout the process of being inspired to write the script, throughout the writing of the script. And in that process, I had a couple of close friends of mine who are psychics and psychic mediums, both very well known. One is Cindy Keza. She is the top psychic on the Discovery Channel. If you watch any of those Discovery Channel shows, like the Holzer Files, that's her. She's a good friend of mine. So one day she and I were just talking. She's like, and because that happens to her, like I've seen it happen. She's like sitting there, like, there's somebody named Jim coming through who wants to talk to you. We're like, what? And it turned out to be Jim Dougherty, Marilyn's husband. And so we set up a session. I was like, I want to talk to this guy. And Marilyn also came through, and we had this incredible revelatory talk, much of which I revealed in last month's conversation. And then another good friend of mine, Heather, who is a psychic medium, we had a similar thing where we're just getting together, and suddenly both Marilyn and Norma Jean came through, because as she explained to me, they're two different people. They're two different personalities that existed inside the body of this woman. And,
Right.
As I had theorized, and I do believe she was suffering from what we now call dissociative identity disorder, or multiple personalities, that there were two personalities that were within her. And many of the choices that she made in this situation that were perhaps heartbreaking were choices that Marilyn made that Norma Jean didn't want to do. And so both of them came through, and that even in the afterlife, they're two personalities that are arguing with each other, and that came through.
Yeah.
So those were both remarkable sessions that happened unexpectedly, right? So,
Yes.
and both of these people who don't know each other and had not read my script, both of them like, well, she's guiding you to tell this story. Both of them had said that she's picked you to tell this story, like of all the random people on the planet, because everyone else has erased this story, and she wants to tell the truth of what happened to her and who she really was. So they both said that. Now, that was last month, and we shared some of that, and I'm sure, Maria, there's links to it, to that earlier episode, part 1, that people should watch, right? There's my beloved friend, Crayon Witch in Residence, who's also given me a Wiccan perspective on some of the things happening on the paranormal with regard to Marilyn. So welcome, Crayon. But then today, what I'd like to do is actually, because I don't claim to be an expert astrologer, but I'm decently layman proficient on it. And so what I've done is I've done astrological zodiac chart analyses of Norma Jean, her husband Jim, and of their relationship. So over the course of today's video, I'd love to go into those things, because as I did their chart analyses, I discovered each of their unique personalities and how they came together, and how their love was perhaps destined, and perhaps the heartbreak that happened to them was destined, or at least was in the potentials, because I do believe we all have free will. I mean, we don't have to be the slaves of our zodiac charts or any psychic's predictions or anything else. You choose your destiny.
Right.
And Maria, you read my script. I show the possibility of what if she had chosen another choice. She had free will, and she made certain choices that gave her great success and great suffering. And perhaps if she had made other choices, they wouldn't have made her famous, but they might have made her happier. And these are, things that I'd like to explore. But the astrological charts will at least explore the energies that were pushing both of them in certain directions and the choices they made with it. And here we have a lovely photo of them taken on June 19, 1942, when they got married. Right actually here in Westwood, only a 15-minute drive from where I live. They were married in the home of a friend of her foster parents that were affluent, because she wasn't affluent, because she was, didn't have parents. Her parents were both, mother was in a mental hospital and her father had skipped out before she was born. But this family friend had their lovely ceremony in that house. That house is still there. It's a beautiful home. And this was them. And, this is a good looking couple. I mean, these are attractive people. I mean, they're good looking people, right? So people have actually asked me, God willing, you make your movie, who you're going to cast. So I'll tell you who my ideal cast is that would actually work for both of them. And fun, they've worked together. They have chemistry. So my ideal cast, I'd love to hear your ladies' opinions of this. So my ideal cast for actually, let's bring the photo back. So I want to compare. Let's bring that photo back for a second. So I want to compare, see people if you can see it. So my ideal cast for Norma Jean is, I actually would love Sydney Sweeney, that actress Sydney Sweeney, who's becoming big recently, to play her. Because you know what I'm talking about. She's very, do you know Sydney Sweeney?
Yes, I've seen her. I'm trying to compare this particular one. Are you talking about the earlier version of her, right?
Of Norma Jean? Yes, yeah. To play, because this most of the movie, you read the script. Most of the movie is her, as before Marilyn is only briefly in the movie for only a few minutes, right? But Norma Jean is. Sydney's a very attractive young woman. She's in Euphoria, she's in White Lotus, and last year she exploded as a feature person, not just as a movie star, but she produced 2 big movies. She produced Anything But You, right, which is a romantic comedy that many people said resurrected the romantic comedies, and then she did this horror movie, The Immaculate, which I thought was actually a very good movie. And she produced both of them. She's 25 years old, so in many ways she's parallel. She's parallel to Norma Jean, because Sydney Sweeney is a small town girl from Spokane, Washington, from like a working class family, which is what Norma Jean was, working class background. Yeah. She's not like Hollywood royalty. And she was deep, like Norma Jean. She's deeply ambitious, said, I'm going to be more than this small town girl. And she came to Hollywood, and, she's very physically attractive, and she knew that was going to get her attention. So she used that to get her earlier roles, like on Euphoria, where she runs out naked for some tangent parts of the show, right? But she used that to get attention. But like as Norma Jean did, both as a model, and as an actress, she used her looks to advance herself, not surprisingly. But like Norma Jean, Sydney's like, I'm more than that. That's just an instrument I'm using. I'm an intelligent woman with an ambition. And so she's already producing movies at the age of 25 that are hugely successful, right? And Norma Jean that was her ambition. She didn't produce movies until she turned 30, right? This girl's already ahead of her, right? So that's my ideal for Norma Jean. But my cast is actually acted with Sydney Sweeney in that romantic comedy. I think for Jim, the ideal cast is Glenn Powell, the guy from Twisters.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's the resurrection of the old star movie star good looks, right? He's got that old star charisma of the 1950s movie stars, of like handsome men like Cary Grant or Rock Hudson. He's got that, right? It's a resurrection of that. And Jim, she married 3 times. The other 2 dudes were more famous than him, but they weren't that good looking. I mean, this guy was like model good looks. We have the photos of him, right? I mean, so this is like an attractive couple, right? And this is, if you didn't know the destinies that were facing them in the future, this is an ideal marriage. She is a young girl, teenager with no family, with no roots, who ends up falling in love with and marrying the boy next door, who is, he's like the big catch in her little town in Van Nuys. He's the football star in the high school. He's the class president, right? He ends up, acting on stage with Jane Russell because he's such a good-looking, charismatic guy. So for her, this is like, oh my God, like this is a catch, right? For a girl with no family in a working class environment, this is the catch, right? And you would think that these 2 are like, it's like prom king and prom queen, right? And you would think they're going to last forever. And they didn't, which is tragic, right? Because they could have, because he really was a good husband to her. It's not the situation where the prom king turns into a drunken loser and starts abusing her. It's quite the opposite. Right. And so, and we'll explore why this attractive, seemingly normal, destined couple to be together didn't be.
Ms. Nitter, you were going to say something?
I'm sorry, I kept talking.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with what he's saying. who was thinking of casting. It's like I'm trying to picture them and, you know, Marilyn and her husband. It's like, yeah, I can see that, you know.
Yeah, you know what? Hold on. What I'm going to do? Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can. I'm going. Can I? If I text you an image, Maria, can you upload that on your computer? Okay, if I text you an image, can you do that?
Yeah, I should be able to, or
All right, hold
Dr.
on.
O should be able to pull something up here too, because I'm sure he's already looking.
All right, so yeah, because this is this is one of my favorite pictures where I'm going to send you of Sydney,
Okay.
which really captures her Norma Jean-ness. So I'm
Okay.
gonna text that to you right now. I'm
So
texting that one.
keep watching the baby. He's
Uh,
climbing in a box, so I'm waiting for him to fall out of it.
All right, and let's see if I can send you a good one of Glenn. Oh, Glenn Powell is not hard because here, this is a nice picture. This is actually a nice picture. Let me send you this. This is a nice picture of them together. You can see the chemistry. If anybody saw that romantic comedy movie, the chemistry that these two have, like Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney, is so great that, you know, people assumed that they were having an affair on the set, right? Because they are, I mean, they so vibed, right? And they like played up that vibe in the press conferences. You're looking at them, they're like mooning at each other, and they claim, she's like, well, I have a fiance, and you know that he was a producer on the movie, and that's just, we all did that for PR. I don't know if it was all PR. I mean, so I don't think that either of them is that good an actor. So I don't know about that. I don't know about that. So there's really a vibe between them. It's sort of like a Taylor and Burton, right? You know, it's a little bit like that. And the fans are clamoring for them to come back together in a movie, right? And they haven't. And so I was like, this would be a perfect movie to bring them back together as Marilyn Monroe and her first husband, right? I mean, that would be like a perfect like starring vehicle for them to come back together.
Yeah, I know. It would be. 1 second. I'm sending that over to Dr. O here, but I grabbed the wrong one. I guess it would help if I wore my glasses. I'm just trying to.
Here's the DVD of the movie they did together, Anyone But You, right? And you know,
Oh yeah.
They got very attractive bikini bodies, whatever. So they're very good-looking people, just like those two. So yeah, you got pictures. I mean, look, they've got a vibe. And he was like this. Jim was like this. He was a tall, like she was tall she was a tall girl, and he was taller. Like he was like 6 foot something, and he was very masculine and very strong. Like he ended up becoming like not just a police officer, he was like a sniper. He was like Clint Eastwood. Like he was an action hero in his real life, right? And so this guy I think can play that.
I could definitely see that. Okay, I sent it to him, so he should be pulling up. We should be able to look at it here in a second.
So let's see the chat. Anybody agree, disagree?
Yeah, I was gonna go to the chat here.
Everyone looks like they're just saying hello to one another.
Okay.
That's great. I love seeing that.
Well, Stephanie Janice was saying, because I shared with her the picture of, there's a picture that Norma Jean took of Jim, you know, when they were married, when he was on the beach. So if you have that photo in the ones I sent you, we bring that up because she took that picture because he was looking so handsome sleeping on the beach. She had to take the picture, right? So it's a photo she took herself, right? We pull that up. It's an example of how, you know, attractive he was. See, that's another example of them too. They just vibe.
Yeah.
I'm sure the fiance was kind of annoyed.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Probably.
But there's another lesson for her, because she actually learned Norma Jean's lesson. She has said publicly, and who knows if this will be true as she moves forward in her life, but she has said publicly, Sydney Sweeney has said publicly that she doesn't, people are like, you should be with Glenn Powell, you should be with a movie star. Why are you with this like normal, you know, guy, right? And he's like a businessman in Ohio or something, right? And she's like, there can only be one, you know, movie star in a relationship. There are too many egos. Right. Yeah. I want a nice, normal guy that I can come home to, who's going to be loyal to me, who's not going to cheat on me, who's not going to be like the moment he's more famous than me, he's going to dump me. I just want a stable person to come home to. She said that publicly. That's kind of what Norma Jean had. And she was too young to really understand or appreciate that she would never find that again. Like she would be with very famous men. I mean, she had affairs with Frank Sinatra, all these people, right? They all treated her badly. Then she married Joe DiMaggio, incredibly famous, and he beat the crap out of her. He slapped her around to the point that the makeup artist had such difficulty covering up her bruises, right? I mean, that's not a good husband, right? And then she married who is neither physically attractive, nor was he a good husband. He was psychologically abusive. I mean, he was even worse than Like, I do believe psychological abuse is much more damaging than physical, right? You can heal the physical
Right.
scar when someone gets in your head and like messes with your self-esteem.
Mm.
I mean, there's a reason that after she divorced Arthur Miller, that 1 month after she divorced Arthur Miller, she was in a mental hospital in a straitjacket. Her psychiatrist said she had devolved to such suicidal mania after divorcing him that he had messed with her mind so much that she, unwilling, against Marilyn's will, committed her to a psych hospital in a straitjacket in a rubber room, right? People don't know that. This poor girl was put in a rubber. It's her greatest fear because her mom was schizophrenic. And then a year after that, she's dead. A year after that, she's dead. So I blame Miller for the damage that pushed her over the edge. But
real quick, I want to bring up the Oracle Nation has given a $5 super chat saying congratulations on all your work on this Kamran. Fascinating work.
Oh,
that's
thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank you so much, Oracle Nation.
Thank you.
Have we found the beach photo? We found the beach photo. It's one of the ones I sent you because Stephanie's in the beach photo. He's just lying on the beach asleep. It's like it is. We found it.
Dr. O has it. Yeah, he'll
bring it up because it's in
While we're waiting for that, Sci-Fi Mombi also has given a $5 super chat. So fascinating information on Marilyn. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you, both of you, for that super chat. Thank you so much. And you're right, you have, and PJ was saying this before too, that you have a plethora of information about this.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, I know all this stuff about this period of her life that nobody knows. Like, you ask any Marilyn Monroe fan, they've never heard of it. So here, this is an example. This is a picture Norma Jean took because he was lying on the beach and she thought he looked hot. And it's actually seen in my script, if you remember, when she takes that picture.
Yes,
but that's a photo she took when, like, this is like a year into their marriage, and he was just like asleep on the beach. And dude, this is a movie star.
A great picture. That's a great picture. I love that.
Yeah,
and it's good. But yes, you do have a lot more information than most. And I always wondered why a lot of people like you have access to this. A lot of people would as well, or maybe they don't because you dug further than most. But a lot of people aren't talking about it. What is your view, as in your opinion, as to why maybe it's not shared as much? Is it because they just don't want to see that aspect of it, or is it just opening up a can of worms?
It's both, and it's depending on who you talk to. There's a reason Hollywood doesn't talk about it, and there's a reason most of the fans don't talk about it, right? So Hollywood doesn't want to talk about it because it's a problem for, maybe they exploited her in her lifetime, and they've exploited her even more in her death, right? She's become more famous in her death. Jim said that people today don't realize that she was a star, but she wasn't as big as she is today. I mean, she's bigger today than she was in the 50s. And so they've exploited her for 60 years after her death and made her even bigger for themselves. This poor woman, people don't realize she died broke. She was fired from her last movie because she was having a lot of problems. She wasn't showing up to set, and she was fired. She'd never been fired before. She was fired from her last movie, and about a week before she died, her accountant, and I've seen the letter. Her accountant sent her a letter saying that we need to find another source of income fast because the rate at which you're burning money, we're going to have to take a loan just to get through the year. I mean, this is a woman that's the biggest star in the world in the 1950s. She's dying broke. I mean, her accountant's saying we're about to run out of money, right? And so she died broke, and her acting teacher, who was one of her Svengalis, Lee Strasberg, got the majority of her estate, and he got the rights to her image. And guess what he did with that? So he then marries, he's 67 years old. He marries his 22-year-old or 28-year-old student in class, Anna, who was one of his acting students. And this girl never met Marilyn in her lifetime. And Strasberg then dies like a couple of years later. And this girl with no connection to Marilyn inherits everything, including the rights to her image. So this random woman, Anna Strasberg, became a billionaire because she controlled the licensing rights to Marilyn Monroe, a woman she never met. Anna died January of this year. She lived all these years, all these Marilyn Monroe mugs and things you're buying and the t-shirts. She was the one making money off of it. Lee Strasberg's girlfriend.
Jeez.
I mean, that's how this is. this is exploitation, right?
Yeah,
Marilyn
absolutely.
dies broke, and random nobody becomes a billionaire off.
Jeez, that's sad. That is just sad that she worked so hard to get where she was.
And her legacy is owned by a random nobody who's like, let me
And
just dump the
random
teacher.
nobody.
Who basically let me dump the
Yeah.
teacher and get his stuff, right? And that's what it was.
Yeah.
But so Hollywood, all those people are invested in the myth of Marilyn, right? And so
Mhm.
the relationship with Jim screws up the myth, as we talked about last time, because the myth is, the positive side of the myth is she's this glorious goddess actress archetype, right? The negative side of the myth is that she is a constant victim, that she was, a candle in the wind. She never knew where to turn to where the rain turned in. So that's part of the way you infantilize her, is that she's a victim, right? And she was like thrown into this by destiny and victimized by life, and then it's like, well, no, she actually had a stable, good life for 4 years. That Hollywood said, forget this. We can make you famous. Forget this guy. Forget your happy life. We'll give you something more exciting. And she willingly took it. She had the power to say no to it, right? And she took it. And she let close that period of her life behind her, and then went into extreme instability that benefited everybody else and not her, right? So that messes with the Hollywood's myth and makes them look really bad. So that's a Hollywood reason, right? That's why most of that terrible movie Blonde. Netta, did you see that movie Blonde?
I haven't seen it.
Sorry, I was muted. No, I didn't.
It's a horrible movie.
Is it?
It was Netflix.
I didn't want to see it because
it's degrading, and Ana de Armas does an incredible job in the role with a bad script. The script is bad, and that's why. But what's amazing about it is that movie, which is a Netflix $100 million movie that came out last year, right? That movie. This is the example of Hollywood not talking about it. It focuses on her childhood struggle, suffering, and abuse as a foster child. And then it jumps to her being abused by Hollywood and like abused by men and whatever. And it literally jumps over the 4 years of her marriage with Jim. He's not in the movie. If you watch the movie, you don't know he existed. You don't know she was married. You don't know she left this guy. He goes from abused child to abused starlet. They erased him.
Wow.
How can you erase 4 years of her life?
I know, which is part of her legacy, anyway, even though he was not in the, next to her in pictures, he was still a big part of her life in another way.
She's only she only became Marilyn Monroe because of him, because had he not married her, she would have been sent back to the orphanage. And this is what I think would have happened. She would either have killed herself in the orphanage because she hated the orphanage. She'd been there before. She would either killed herself in the orphanage, or she would end up running away, which she did before, or she would have just ended up becoming a streetwalker. I think she would have, a girl with no family, with no connections, no one to protect her, would have become a streetwalker on Sunset Boulevard. That's what would have happened to her. And she would have died at 25 of a heroin overdose. That's what would have happened. So he gave her a stable home. The reason we know her as Marilyn Monroe is because he gave her a stable home. She was then discovered as a model. She was working at a factory in World War II while he's away at the war. And a photographer takes a picture of her, right? And that starts her journey into Marilyn Monroe. The only reason she's Marilyn Monroe is because this guy saved her life and gave her a stable world from which she could be discovered.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Maria, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's right. I was just going to say, PJ over here saying Cameron's got a freaking PhD on this topic.
I didn't want to, but now I know more about it than I ever wanted to.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. Yes, he is a gorgeous guy. And it's heartbreaking. The story is heartbreaking. But that brings us to the point I just made, brings us to why the fans don't want to talk about it. Yeah. Why the fans don't want to talk about it. Because the fans have mythologized her in their own way, right? And, the fan myth is that she was a strong, independent woman who didn't need no man and achieved her destiny by herself. Well, that's not exactly true. And the recognition that this guy essentially rescued her, saved her, took care of her, and then she dumped him to become famous affects how they see their idealized version of Marilyn. See, she said, Marilyn would say near the end of her life, I just wish people would see me as a human being, right? And fans say,
Mhm.
I wish people would see her as a human being. But then you go, well, she's a human being. She made some bad choices, and she broke the heart of a man who loved her. Well, I don't want her to be that much of a human being. That's too.
Right? I know. That's too
That's not.
human.
I don't want that. I don't want any flaws in my human being.
Right. Yeah. I know. It's hard to imagine that we have some. And Mike loves cats here saying Jim's, I can't see that my glasses, sorry, I tried. Jim's the tail bush center that leads back to Norma Jean. Fate in a long orbit. This movie has to be made.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, because this was destiny, and that's why when we get to the astrology part of today's thing, this was destiny. This was, there's actually a specific placement in there, what is called the composite chart of the relationship, said this was going to happen, that this was going to happen to them if they got together, that it would change both of their lives. I mean, it was remarkable when I found it. It was like, wow, this is like glaring. Like if these two got together, they would transform each other's lives in the world, and they did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And had they not come together,
speaking of, I'm just checking the time. I want to make sure we get to the chart because
I want to start moving to it. Yeah. How much time you got? Another half hour, 45 minutes? What do you got?
Let's see. Sort of what time do we start? Yeah, about a half hour. So I didn't know.
Okay, so why don't you want to jump into it? Want to pull up one of the charts? If we can pull up Norma Jean's chart.
Which one?
Norma Jean's chart. If we can pull up Marilyn's chart.
Okay.
Yeah, we pull up her birth chart. This is her zodiac chart. Let's pull that up. Here we go.
I don't think we got a chance to even get into this at all on the last stream. So it's like I was really eager to see this because it's fascinating to me. I don't know a lot about it, but I love this sort of thing. Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you to we have about 640 people in the stream right now. So they definitely want to make sure we definitely make this exciting for them. And here we have the chart that everybody waited for on the last stream that we were doing about this.
Yeah. All right. So this is for those of you who are unfamiliar, which I think most people are. This is an astrology chart that's based on the moment that Norma Jean Mortensen was born. On June 1st, 1926, at like 10 a.m. in the morning. And this was what the sky looked like. That's what all these symbols mean. It's just what the sky looked like at the moment she was born, where all the different constellations were and all the planets were. And, based on my experience doing this for almost 30 years, these things tend to be pretty accurate, at the very least with regard to personality analysis, right? Like I said, you have free will. You can choose other choices, but your personality tends to be pretty much wired in, and then you can make choices with that. So let's look at this chart. So if we look at, for those who don't understand how this thing works, let's look at the circle. And if we look at to the utmost left of the circle, you see the letter AC. See that? AC, like in the center left.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is pointing to what is called, that's it. That's pointing to what is called the ascendant, AC, the rising sign. That's the constellation that was rising on the eastern horizon the moment she was born. And all of our ascendants, what the ascendant represents is how it's like the filter of life. It's how we see the world and how the world sees us. So imagine you're born and there's like a rose-colored filter so in front of you. So you see the world as red, and because you're wearing a rose-colored filter, everyone sees you as red. It's not necessarily true, but it's how you see life and how life sees you, right? So this is how we interact with life. And as such, it defines our destiny because it's our paradigm of how the universe works and our purpose in it, right? And so her ascendant, her rising sign is in Leo, which should not surprise anybody. Leo is a sign of drama. It is a sign of the queen, the king, the person who loves to be the center of attention, who is revered by others, who automatically brings adulation because everyone admires them and sees them as someone they aspire to be. Sounds like Marilyn Monroe, right? She was always, even if you look at her earliest photos as a baby, I mean, the camera loves her, right? And the camera loves her because it's this Leo filter of a queen, even as a baby that, and Jim said that. He's like, even when she's, just his wife, the moment you take a picture of her, you take a picture of her with 30 people in the room and your eye goes straight to her. Your eye goes straight to her, right? She can be the back row, number 7 over, and your eye only goes to her because she had this magical charisma of the actress, of the center of attention, right? That's not a surprise. That's Marilyn Monroe. However, now look, I want to see two things related to that which define her personality. So we talk about the fact that, she had dual personalities, and people say she was a Gemini sun and that Geminis can have dual personalities, but it's even more pronounced here. There's evidence in her chart that she has two inherently conflicting personalities on her birth chart on top of her Leo. So let's look at them. So do you look underneath the AC see the little green trident symbol, right?
Mhm.
That's the Neptune. That's the planet Neptune. And Neptune was on her ascendant in her first house. So it also, along with this Leo glamour that colored her, right? Neptune was on top of it, adding its energy. So Neptune is like the sign of Pisces. It rules the sign of Pisces, and Pisces is a sign of gentleness, of emotion, of nurturing, healing, like of dreams and fantasies. And what is Marilyn? Marilyn is, to this day, is an archetype of a fantasy, right? She invokes dreams in us. You've experienced her in dreams. Am I right, Maria?
Yes.
So she has this power. It's on her destiny that she evokes the power of dreams. She represents an archetype, a romanticized archetype. And it also reflects someone who is very Christ-like in that they're very like giving to other people to the point that they injure themselves. At her best, Norma Jean was someone who was famous, even when she wasn't Marilyn. Norma Jean, Jim said, the Norma Jean that he knew was a self-sacrificing young woman that just wanted others to be happy, that loved children, that loved animals, that was very gentle and healing. That's all Neptune. And when we think of Marilyn, remember, everyone loves Marilyn not just because she's glamorous, it's because she's vulnerable. Everyone says that, right? When the casting director that cast her or got her the first Fox deal that she got, the woman who was casting director saw her in her essentially her screen test, and she said, "You're going to become a movie star, not because you're pretty. That's not why you're going to become a movie star." She said, "I can see you're pretty and you can be glamorous if we mess up your hair a little bit. You can be that, right? That's not it. You're going to become a movie star because when I watched your screen test, I could see how scared you were in your eyes. Like she's terrified. And I suddenly wanted to hug you and hold you and protect you." That's what everyone still has, is feeling they want to protect Marilyn, right?
Yeah.
That's like a child that's in over her head, right? That's drowning. That's Neptune. That's what we love about her. That's what Jim loved about her. That's what made him want to protect her and made her protect her from this evil world of Hollywood, because he knew it's going to be filled with casting couch scumbags and all these people. And she went right into it. And when she died, Jim said that fame was always going to destroy her because she didn't have the emotional strength for the horrible casting couch of Hollywood, the sexual abuse, the degradation, the alcohol, the drugs, everything that the world represented. He knew that Norma Jean didn't have the emotional strength for it. And he tried to warn her, like, "Honey, this is going to hurt you. It's going to kill you." And she, for reasons we're going to talk about, said, "I can control it." She couldn't control it, but she thought she could, right? But that's why we feel compassion for her, because even Jim said this, if you look at her movies, at her photos, if you just cover her mouth, he said this, cover her mouth in her photos, then look at her eyes. Her eyes show sadness and fear. Even at the height of her fame, if you just cover her brilliant smile and cover it, look at her eyes, she's scared, she's lonely, she's sad. And that's when she's at the top of her game. That's Neptune. Right? But now there's the other thing. So, but then why did she walk away from Jim if this is true? And why did she do it in such a hurtful way? Like, he was a loving guy. He never hit her once, never, abused her, unlike her second and third husbands, never put her down, right? And she sent him 200 love letters when he's away in Merchant Marines. Every day he would get a new love letter from her wherever he was overseas. And it kept him going in the war. And then 200 love letters. Then one day out of nowhere, divorce papers, no warning. The most horrible way you can do it, right? Without any warning that's coming. Why does she do it that way? What part of her is that, right? That doesn't fit the gentle, nurturing, self-sacrificing girl that we just talked about. It doesn't. So that's the other personality. That's Marilyn. So if you look right above the letter AC, you see this little symbol in gray with like a crescent and like, a woman's sign underneath that, right? Crescent. So that is a astronomical point that we all have that is, in her case, incredibly powerful because it is exactly on her ascendant. Like even Neptune's a little bit off of the exact angle. This is exactly on it. So this defined her entire destiny. This point is called Lilith. Are you ladies familiar with the story of Lilith from the Jewish tradition?
I know a little bit.
What do you know there?
Put me on the spot, why don't you?
Okay, well, you don't have to know anything. Okay. You've heard
Oh,
it. You've heard
actually,
it.
yeah, it's like
Bring
my
it.
mind now is gone completely blank because you put
Then
me
I'm
on
not
the
going to pretend
spot.
it's not. Don't worry about it.
Mention it. It sounds familiar, but go ahead.
So
Yeah.
Lilith, there's a story in the Jewish tradition. It's not in the Bible, but it's in Jewish rabbinic tradition that says Lilith is the first wife of Adam before Eve. That, Eve is made from Adam's rib. She's part of him. That's the biblical story, right? But Lilith was made from the same mud as Adam. She was equal to him. Like God, like experimented. First he made human man, then he made woman out of the same mud, and they came out equal, right? And then when it came time to procreate, Adam's like, well, it's time to have sex. I'm going to be on top. Lilith's like, no, you're not going to be on top. I'm going to be on top, right? And then they start fighting because who's in charge of the relationship, right? Who's the dominant and who's the passive? And Adam's not going to play that role, and Lilith's not going to play that role. And so Lilith gets really angry. She's like, well, I'm not going to have, no man is going to dominate me. And I'm not interested. So she leaves Eden. She storms out of Eden, says, go to hell. I'm done with you. You can keep it. And she goes out, leaves Eden to go out to the wilderness and the desert. And because she's out there, she's alone. She ends up hooking up with the demons that are out there in the desert. So she starts having like demon boyfriends and starts copulating with them instead of with Adam, and starts having like demon children. That's the Jewish story. And God is angry at her for rebelling and basically going over to the other side, that he punishes her and he sends angels that kill her demon children. And so in response to that, Lilith says, I'm going to get revenge. And now God has created Eve, who is willing to play the submissive role where he's dominant. Because in any relationship, somebody's got to be dominant and somebody's got to be submissive. And I think a lot of relationships right now, the woman is dominant, the guy is submissive. Fine. If that's working for you, great. But in this relationship, Adam was dominant and Eve was like, all right, I'm good with being the mom and the homemaker and all that. And that was their, and Lilith hated Eve because she saw her as weak, saw her as like, you gave up your feminine power for this guy. And now God has killed my children. So what I'm going to do? I'm going to kill your children. So Lilith became the origin story for sudden infant death syndrome. That when babies died in the Middle East, they said it was Lilith's spirit coming and killing babies in their crib to get revenge on Eve.
Wow.
And so this is pre-biblical. There are Sumerian references to Lilith. She's called Lilithu. And the Sumerians would put amulets over babies' cribs to protect the baby from Lilith. So this is an ancient idea. And I do probably believe there's a real spirit that does this, right? There really is this archetypal being, right? And in astrology, so that's what Lilith represents. It represents the untamable, powerful woman. And a lot of women today, like feminists, will take the archetype of Lilith, the Lilith fairs, right? Because they think, well, that's empowering. So I'm not here to critique that. You can see Lilith as empowering. I'm just here to tell you how the myth sees her and how astrology sees her. So you can see that as empowering. But the story is that she is empowering to the point that she doesn't give a damn about anybody else, right? So you could find that empowering, but she's literally the character, the archetype is, I only care. She's the dark feminine, like the goddess Kali of the Hindu tradition, right? She's the unstoppable feminine that doesn't give a damn about anything except what it wants. It's the unstoppable raging river that will wipe out a village without thinking about it, right? Because that's what it does. And so Lilith is this force of, I do what's right for me. I don't give a damn if you think I'm selfish. If you get in my way, I destroy you, right? And that's the archetypal thing sitting on top of Norma Jean's chart. It's the most powerful thing in her chart. That's Marilyn Monroe. As Jim said, people loved Norma Jean. People who knew her didn't like Marilyn because not the image that she created for the movies. That was mostly Norma Jean. She used that image, right? People loved that image. The person that was the survivor in the casting couch and the scummy system of Hollywood was, screw you, I'm going to use this for me, right? And if you got in her way, she got rid of you, right? And people who knew her didn't like her because they thought her as someone who's utterly selfish and focused only on her own happiness, right? And she had no problem breaking up she had an affair with her agent, William Morris, Johnny Hyde. She moved in with him. He broke up with his wife and left his children for her. And then he died. And then she wouldn't marry him. It's like, he just ruined his life. His wife hated her, right? And then she's like, oh, I just used you. I love you, but I'm not actually going to marry you after she broke up his marriage. This is stuff that fans don't want to talk about. Like, how did she become famous? Well, she slept with her agent, broke up his marriage. You know, when her agent died, the wife had her kicked out of the house. Like, she was literally put on the street. And what does she go? She goes and lives with her acting teacher, who's a lesbian, and starts a lesbian affair with her because she's going to use her now because she has no one to be with. Did we lose Netter? I don't know.
Yeah, she'll probably be back here. It's like,
okay. I hope I didn't offend her. But
no.
This is someone that to achieve her dreams was utterly selfish, completely used people, was ruthless, heartless, had no problem with hurting you if it served her purposes. And yet at the same time, she was also this other person that, you know, that loved children, that, you know, Robert Mitchum, who co-starred with her in a movie. They actually knew each other when Robert Mitchum was a factory worker with Jim when they were both all nobodies. So it goes back, that's how old their relationship was before Robert Mitchum went to Hollywood. So Robert Mitchum starred with her in a movie, and he talked about how they were filmed on a river, and she saw a crew member who had to, like, you know, was working on things, and he was shivering from cold. She stopped the production until they sent him to the hospital because she was afraid that he was really sick, and she wouldn't start until they replaced the crew member with someone who was properly fitted for the cold, right? So that's also Norma Jean. That's Norma Jean, right? And yet you've got Tony Curtis, who worked with her in Some Like It Hot, who said kissing her is like kissing Hitler. He hated her because he only saw Marilyn. He only saw a selfish woman that didn't give a damn that she was 7 and 12 hours late for the set, didn't know her lines, and expected everyone to kiss her ass, right? That's all he saw. So he hated her. People are like, how can people love her and hate her? It's because there's two different people.
Right.
Norma Jean, everyone loved. When the Marilyn appeared, nobody loved that because it didn't love anybody except itself. That's why when Marilyn was activated, when she got her job offer for her first 20th Century Fox role, Norma Jean wanted to stay with Jim. She kept saying, Jim, I know the studio says I have to divorce you to have my to take this. They don't want a married woman as a starlet, right? Number one, they wanted a casting couch her, so her husband is a problem, right? But they also didn't want her to run off and have babies. But Norma Jean was like, but can we just live together? I don't want to lose you. I love you. I'll let's just make a technical divorce so that I can take the job, but I want to stay with you. And he's like, look, I'm not gonna be divorced and live with you. You're just using me then, right? But Norma Jean really didn't want to lose him. She loved him. Marilyn was like, screw this guy. He thank you, you sucker. I used you to stabilize my life. I got what I wanted. I got my movie role. Get lost, right? And Jim saw both of those personalities and he didn't understand it. He's like, how did she go from loving me one day and next day saying, thanks, I don't need you anymore? Because they're two different people.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's that Gemini part. Yeah, Knitter just texted and said her internet went weird, so she's going to try to get back. So
because we don't have a lot of time, why don't we move to another chart? There's so much else in this chart, but I think that's the most important thing that people need to walk away with. Yeah. He was destined to have these two radically different personalities. And that also created Marilyn Monroe, because the radically different personality we see her as the sex goddess who's also a vulnerable, innocent child. That's Neptune versus Lilith. They are uncomfortable. These are different, opposed personalities that would emerge whenever she felt threatened. Lilith would come out as her defense mechanism. Marilyn would. When she was herself, she could be gentle and sweet. Mm-hmm. And as she went further down into Hollywood, it became harder for Norma Jean to come out because she was in constant survival mode. The more famous,
I think constant survival mode, but it was also because she was being forced to. That just like we were talking about before backstage in regards to her voice. Yeah,
her voice isn't what we talk about. So all of you know this, the sensual Marilyn Monroe voice. That's not real. Jim heard it for the first time after he divorced her. He called her a couple months later because he had to deal with like some bill or something that still had to deal with after the divorce. And her voice sounded different. It's like, hey, do you have a cold? Are you sick? She's like, no, the studio is training me to talk like this. That was a voice coach because her voice was very childlike. Again, the Neptune, very childlike, feminine, high-pitched voice. And she lowered it intentionally because she had a stuttering problem, number one, which made it difficult for her to say her lines. And they said, control your voice. That will control the stutter. And also, we want you to sound sexy. You sound like a little girl. So her entire life after that, for 16 years, 24 hours a day, she has to do a fake voice because that's not her natural voice. The Marilyn we see in interviews and on movies, and that's not her voice. She could never let her real voice out, right? That's how deeply she had to hide herself. Her entire day-to-day life is a performance.
That's just unbelievable. That we couldn't, that they couldn't have just been happy with the way she was, and
she would have been a
whatever
star the way
had
she
to do,
was. She would have been a
fine.
star.
Yeah, either way, with that voice, I
But
think.
they didn't care. That's why they made her get plastic surgery. You know, that agent that she was sleeping with made her get plastic surgery because she's not good enough. She was good enough. She was the #1 model in America, the way she was, with that little bump on her nose and her double chin. She was the #1 model in America.
Yeah, I know. And I can only imagine that, the self-esteem issues that you have from before, when you're having so much trauma in your life, and then you go into Hollywood, and then
they always
tell
find something wrong with you. I mean, she hated herself anyway. She didn't like herself. She thought she was ugly. Jim knew that. He couldn't understand why she thought she was ugly, right? But but then they fed on that. You are ugly. Your nose isn't good enough. Your chin isn't good enough, right? They fed it.
Yeah. Oh, there you are.
All right, so we got maybe 15, 20 minutes, so let's make it fast. So now the next part up here, we've got, can we maybe make it a little bit bigger so people can see it? Can we expand it a little bit? I don't know if we can do that. Make it larger. Can we make it bigger? Yeah, that's good. Okay. So this is Jim Dougherty's chart, right? So this is her husband, who was 5 years older than her. And so again, if we look now to the right, the left, we see the letter AC, right, which is the ascendant, right? On the center left there, and that is on his ascendant right there. It's right next. You see that red arrow. That is the sign of Sagittarius. So when ascendant is in Sagittarius, he was called Lucky Jim. Sagittarius is a sign of good luck. It's a sign of divine mercy, right? And he was called Lucky Jim. Like, he would always get lucky. Like, the pretty girl next door would end up becoming the biggest movie. His wife becomes a movie star in the world, the biggest movie star in the world. I mean, he was a lucky guy, right? Things would happen for him, right? But this is very important because his core personality was that he saw himself as a spiritual, ethical, moral guy. Sagittarius represents looking for God. It's a person who's on a moral quest. And that's what he was. Like, he could have been an actor with his looks, and he had acted. Jane Russell would become a movie star. So he had the talent and he had the looks to become a movie star. But he's like, I want to do more with my life. I want to help people. So what does he do? Instead of becoming a movie star, he follows his ideals and becomes a police officer and rescues people and saves people's lives. Like, he saved a lot of people's lives. He wasn't like a meter maid. He was like a sniper. He set up the first SWAT team in world history. This guy was involved in if you remember the Patty Hearst kidnapping, rescuing Patty Hearst.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
He was involved in that. He saved James Garner, the classic actor, from a kidnapping attempt. This guy was Clint Eastwood, right? He was Dirty Harry, because he could have been a movie star. Instead, he becomes this guy who's saving people's lives because he had ideals. And this is exactly what Norma Jean needed, a moral, ethical person. She had not one moral, ethical person in her entire life except this guy, right? And so, and she walks away from the only moral person in her entire life. And Hollywood knew this guy was a problem because, imagine, they needed to get rid of him because they wanted her on the casting couch. Like, her modeling agent was running a call girl operation. So a husband is going to be like, yeah, honey, I don't want you spending 3 a.m. with some weirdo that you met in the bar.
Yeah.
Right? That's like a modeling client. What the fuck? He would have stopped it, right? That's a problem.
Right.
And then when he becomes a cop, he would have, this casting couch ain't going to work. Have you ladies seen LA Confidential?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So LA Confidential, this is that world. This is LAPD in the 1950s Hollywood, right? And if you remember that movie showed the cops are more dangerous than the mobsters, right? And so if he was a cop in the LAPD in the 50s and they tried to casting couch her, any one of these producers who's like, give me a blowjob for the role, the next day, LAPD would showed up at their house, put a gun to their head, planted drugs in their car, and arrested them and said, you messed with Jim's wife, we're going to blow your brains out. Hollywood was scared of the LAPD, and he was joining the LAPD. They can't have this guy around if they want this pretty girl on the couch, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So a couple of things I want to point out, is then we'll get to a composite. So 2 other things that are very important here is, if you look now, I'm going to bring you I'm going to go down to the center. You see the little blue mark on the center, right? You see that the blue thing in the lower center, like just above the chart.
Yeah.
So now just follow that, go up the circle towards the red thing, and then to the green thing. So you go counterclockwise up the circle from the blue symbol that's just above. You bring your thing all the way down to the bottom of the circle. Bring to the bottom of the circle. Bottom of the circle. See the blue, the right there, right? Now let's go up counterclockwise to the red thing next to it. Counterclockwise next to the red thing. Now go up to the next thing up to that. You're on the right direction. Go to the green thing. It's the green thing, right? Okay. So that is the sign of Taurus, the green thing. And if you'll see right above it, there's these two symbols, like the male symbol and the female symbol. Do you see that? Right above the circle, male. So those were the planet Mars and Venus. And they are in the sign of Taurus. So that tells us a lot, because Venus represents your loving side and Mars represents your action and side and your anger side. So, and they're both in the sign of Taurus. I have Venus in my Taurus, so I understand it. The person with Venus in Taurus is Taurus is the most stable sign. It is rock earth, right? So when someone has Venus in Taurus, Venus shows how you show love. They show love by being completely dependable, rock solid. You know, they once they get married, it's lifelong. That's why Jim never got over it. When she left him, he married again. He had children. His second wife kind of knew that he was still hung up on the first one, because it's true. Venus in Taurus is a lifelong love. That's how I approach love. For me, it's one shot or we're done, right? So that's it. And, you know, and so he was never going to leave her. A Venus and Taurus person, they show love by being physically affectionate, by taking care of you, by being grounded. The things that you need in a marriage. They might not always be fun for like adventure and boyfriend, but that's what you need in a 30-year marriage, right? And that was offering her. And the Mars is very important. The Mars is also in Taurus. So Mars represents how we get angry, and Taurus is control. So he, you know, like I said, DiMaggio slapped her around at the slightest thing. You know, Arthur Miller she upset him. He would say the right thing to cut her down. Mars and Taurus, Jim was not an angry guy. He controlled it all the time. He suppressed it. So even when she was breaking his heart, he didn't blow up at her, right? When he got the divorce papers, he was horrified. He didn't see it coming. He said he wanted to kill himself. He was on a boat in China, you know, and he was going to jump overboard. Then he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I have to talk to her. So a month later, he comes back to the US on shore leave, and he confronts her. He goes back home and says, you sent me divorce papers. She was afraid to meet him because he's a physically powerful guy. He was a champion boxer in the Merchant Marines, right? And so and he was involved in boxing his whole life. He ended up being like part of the Maine boxing champion as an old man. Like he moved to Maine, and he was such a well-known boxer that the Maine Boxing Association had him come on board to guide the training people on how to box, right? So he was a big boxer. He was physically very powerful, right? And she was afraid he was going to hit her because the way she had done it, right? Out of nowhere, it's like, I'm leaving you and we're done. She was afraid to come to the door because she thought he was going to hit. He wrote that in his memoir. She thought, he could tell she was afraid to be around him because she thought he was going to hit her. And he's like, honey, I'm never going to hit you. I've never hit anybody in my life. I'm never going to hit you. And then he tried to have this conversation with her, and she wouldn't budge because she also was stubborn. And he's like, well, I'm not going to force you to stay with me if this is what you want to do. And so he signed the divorce papers, even though it destroyed him. If this guy was DiMaggio, imagine she'd done this with DiMaggio, the way she did it. He would have broken her nose.
Yeah.
I mean, she had to run away when she divorced him. She ran away to LA. He was in New York. She ran away to divorce him because she couldn't be in the same room with him because he would have beaten her. Right? And these guys, and he's like, you're destroying me. Like he was in suicidal depression, but he never hit her, which is what she thought he was going to do. And maybe she almost wanted to do that because then she could feel like good about it. Like he did something. Now I can say he's an asshole. And he's just like, no, fine. I'll sign the papers. You don't want me? Fine. I'll sign the papers. And he walked away. Most men would have created more drama than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's how much he loved her, was that he just, you know.
And he never stopped loving her. This poor guy, he dies in 2005 at the age of 84. He lived for 50 years after she died. And he was haunted by her death every single day because he felt like he failed. Like he kept saying in his memoir, could I have said something different? I needed to convince her this was going to destroy her. That the modeling, I could like tolerate the modeling, even though she was spending weeks with sleazy guys who are trying to sleep with her. Like most of our spouses wouldn't like us spending weeks with people that are trying to get us in bed, traveling. Most of our spouses wouldn't like that, right? Right.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
fairly so, right? But he let her go because he trusted her, perhaps unfair, perhaps wrongly, because she really did end up sleeping with those guys, right? But he's like, no, my sweet Norma Jean would never cheat on me. Norma Jean wouldn't, Marilyn would, because Marilyn was a user. So Marilyn was activated, and I was like, oh, I'm going to use this photographer to get famous, right? Norma Jean would never have cheated on him, but Marilyn would. And he didn't know Marilyn until it was too late. But, he didn't stop her from that. He's like, modeling, all right, I mean, I'm not happy that you're away for 3 weeks with this sleazy dude. Fine. But he knew she could do modeling. He knew the acting would destroy her, because acting is about emotional immersion. And he knew she was emotionally screwed up. And that acting would open those wounds, not heal them. He knew that.
Yeah.
Especially because she had got involved in method acting, which is the worst possible form. If you are a psychologically damaged person, I do not recommend the Strasberg method technique, because it's about going into your past memories of your pain and accessing it. This is a deeply damaged psychotic woman to constantly relive her childhood pain to act in a scene.
Yeah.
Why is she dead at 36? He knew acting was going to destroy her because she wasn't emotionally capable of it.
Mhm.
Modeling was easy for her. It was like this. The camera just loved her.
Yeah.
She didn't have to do anything. But she wasn't emotionally able to act. She was damaged and taken advantage of by acting teachers because of that. So look, but he never stopped loving her. He's like, it's my fault. I should have done something different. She'd be alive. She'd be alive today if I had done anything different. But it was her choice. There's nothing he could have done.
It was. I don't think there's anything he could have done. And I know he tried because he loved her. But I think the hard part for him would have been that he loved her, didn't want her to feel that he was controlling her. But at the same time, was trying to do that protecting thing, seeing that vulnerable side and wanting to protect her as well. And finding it very hard
And
to find that balance.
Yeah, there's no balance because, he would say, honey, I don't like you going off with this photographer. But she's like, well, don't you trust me? And he's like, look, this is the 1940s. Most guys would be like, no, you sit at home. I'll tell that guy to get lost. He's like, no, I do trust you. And then she would betray him, right? I mean, what's this guy going to do? He wants to be a progressive husband, and it doesn't work out for him, right? It doesn't work out for him because, he didn't know she was damaged. Like when she became Marilyn, he didn't see it coming. He knew there was something going on with her. He knew there was another personality, but he said she kept hiding it from him. And then it came out when it was triggered, and he had no preparation for it.
Yeah.
So
that would be shocking.
We're running out of time. So why don't we quickly do the last? Let's do the last chart, and then we'll wind down.
Okay.
The last chart is the composite chart. If we have that, which is Jim and Norma Jean composite, right? Okay. So this is what happens when we combine their astrological charts, and this is the chart of their relationship. So again, let's go up to the AC. Let's go up to that AC, right? So you see that's the ascendant. And what is the ascendant in? The ascendant of their relationship, like how did their relationship appear to the world, is in the sign of Libra. That's Libra, right? So Libra, so they appeared like we saw in the pictures. Libra is a sign of love, beauty, charm, elegance. They appear like a very attractive couple. They appear like a couple. Like you see them, like these are the kind of people you'd expect to be married. They're good looking. They have a nice vibe. They take care of each other. That's how the world saw them, right? And so, and this is a good sign because Libra ascendant is great for a marriage because Libra is a sign of partnership, right? So this was a healthy marriage. Everyone saw it as a healthy marriage. That's why nobody in his life could understand what happened. His mother, his family, his friends, like, what's happening here? Because it made no sense. How do you go from a completely perfect marriage, as far as we're seeing, to her running off? And so they didn't understand these dynamics. So now look at the sign, the little red symbol underneath the AC. You see that symbol with the cross and the squig? Right? That is the planet. Like, she had Neptune on her ascendant. So their relationship has a planet on top of them, which is the planet Saturn. So Saturn is the planet of responsibility, of wisdom, of age, of restriction, of limitations, of all these things. And so their marriage had this thing of like responsibility. Like he felt responsible for her. Like had he not married her, she'd be in an orphanage, right? So he felt like a father figure to her. I'm going to protect her and be the only father figure she's never had, right? So that was the image. People saw them, even because he was a few years older than her. Not only were they elegant, he was like daddy and daughter. They had that dynamic, right? And it's fun. It's tragic because later in life, all of her other relationships, she would say, "Can I call you daddy?" She was always looking for daddy, and she had it. It's in the chart. She had it with him. The actual daddy who's like, I'm not going to let anyone hurt you, baby. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's there. The other thing that is very important about this placement, when you have Saturn in the first house of a chart, of a relationship chart, an astrologist told me it's like super glue, because Saturn is like gravity. It's what pulls you down to Earth and sticks you to the planet Earth, right? That's how powerful. So these two were drawn together like gravity. They were bound together. And so when she broke that relationship, it's like an atomic fission. It's like the atom, if you break an atom, because an atom is bound at that level of gravitational. If you break an atom, it's an atomic explosion, right? It destroyed her life. It literally closed all these wonderful things that were happening in her life, the stability she needed. And it was an atom bomb. And there's the energy of the atom bomb, which made her famous, right? It propelled her instantaneously to success, right? And then the radiation destroyed her. So when you break a bond like that, it's like splitting an atom. And that was the tragedy of their relationship. And it's truly heartbreaking, because when Saturn is in the first house, that is a sign that the marriage should last forever. So what did last forever was their bond, because he never got over her. It actually haunted his second marriage. It ended his second marriage. That lasted for 25 years. He had 3 daughters with his second wife, but she could never, in her mind, live up to Marilyn Monroe as the first wife, right? And so that always haunted her, and eventually she couldn't take it, and she left him, long after Marilyn had died. Like when their children were adults, she left him, because she's like, I can't compete with Marilyn. He's like, well, you don't have to compete with Marilyn. We have a loving family. He's like, no, but you're still thinking about Norma Jean, and she wasn't wrong, right? Because he still loved her. And I believe this, and this is the thing that's the most controversial for the fans and for historians. Isaac, I believe this. Norma Jean loved him till the day she died. I believe that. And I'll tell you why. Because her sister wrote that. She had a half sister, Bernice, who wrote a memoir that said Norma didn't. She agreed with Jim. She didn't want Jim to leave her. She felt she had to divorce him to get the movie contract, but she wanted to stay with Jim. She wanted to stay with Jim for the rest of her life. Her sister said she was in love with him. Right? She didn't want to end it, even if Marilyn wanted to end it. Norma didn't. And one of the evidences, if we can can we bring up the photo that's in there? There's a photo of 2 images of Jim next to each other, of him in a sailor's. They're right next to each other. There's 2 photos right next to each other. Do we have that in the list? Because I want to show you that photo, because it's relevant, and we can end on that, because it really reveals the dynamic. Can we find that photo?
Yeah, I'll look for it.
Yeah, He's got it. Yeah, because I will, when that photo comes out, I'll tell you the history of it, because for me, it is the absolute proof. Because to this day, fans and historians said she never loved that guy. She got rid of him. She never thought about him again. And I know that's a lie. Aside from the fact that Bernice said that that's not true. This photo, right? This is a movie star. It's a good-looking guy, right? These are pictures he sent her when he was in the war, when he's off in the war on a ship, right? And so he's in his sailor's off home, right? So do you know where these pictures were found, Maria? Any idea? These pictures, photos were found hidden inside of the frame of a photo that Marilyn had of her beloved foster mother, the only one foster mother she really loved, Anna Lower, who was a really good mothering figure for her and nurtured her. And after Marilyn's death, in one of the photos she had of Anna Lower that she could have, everyone knew that was her mom figure. She kept it. Someone opened up the frame and found these photos of Jim hidden behind the picture.
Wow.
She didn't destroy her photos. These are photos from their marriage. She didn't destroy the photos from her marriage.
Yeah.
When
you love someone, you can't see yourself getting rid of anything like that.
Yeah, as I was saying, as a woman, to me as a man, but I was saying a woman, if you're hiding this picture instead of just throwing it away, like I don't care about this guy, right? You're hiding it behind the picture of the one woman you love. There's a part of you that can't let him go.
Yeah. I do believe she loved him always. And they always had that love.
Yeah, and that's a tragedy of it. One of my psychic friends, I mentioned Heather, who did one of the readings, and I think we can close on this, is, she had not read my script, and you've read my script, so you know the scene I'm talking about, right? So she had not read my script, and she said Marilyn came through, or Norma Jean came through, and Norma Jean had said, I whispered to Kamran a certain scene in his script, and you've read the scene. There's a scene where when she's facing her death, she imagines the other life that she could have had she just said, I'll stay with him and not go down the Hollywood hellhole, right? And that's actually, I think, the most emotionally evocative moment in the entire movie, right? People really cry, right? Because I play out the other life. You get to see that other life that Norma Jean would have had
Yeah.
had she done this, right? And she said, and my friend Heather said, she gave you a scene, and I was like, oh my God, Heather, that is in the script. You don't know that, but it is. She said she gave the scene because she said those were the images that went through her mind as she was dying. As she was dying, and she disassociated from her body because of the pain, and she went into a fantasy world where she lived out her life with Jim instead. I mean, that's really heartbreaking.
That is heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking. And that's why I hope people are encouraged to, instead of just always feeling like you can only fantasize about having a good life, to actually live it, to live the good life, and to get rid of those things in your life that are causing you hurt and pain, and whether it's emotional or physical or anything, and just live the life that you want and not let others control.
Yeah. And you can have it all if you follow the path of love. You will have it all. She would have been a movie star had she stayed with Jim. He wouldn't have stopped her.
Yeah.
He would have said, stay away from this scumbag, stay away from that scumbag. You need a real acting teacher, not this Bengali. You need to learn how to act. You need to, let me be there on your trips to make sure that you don't get taken advantage of. He would have protected her, and she would have become Betty Davis. She would have been working to her 80s as a real actress and not a sex pot, an image she ended up hating, but she was trapped in.
Yeah.
And so had she stayed with him, she would have had all of her dreams, but she let bad people whisper to her.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, she's responsible. She made the choices. So the lesson she's given us is, there's a reason both of my psychic friends said she wanted you to tell the story. They said her life is a lesson. She says people didn't get the lesson of her life. They're getting the wrong lessons. So this movie is meant to remind you, make better choices than she did. That was her death should be a warning to you. She didn't deserve it, and you don't deserve that.
Yeah. Yeah, this hits home a lot with me. So I get pretty emotional over this. So I thank you for doing that. And maybe we can continue at another point with some other things.
Well, hopefully there'll be more updates. I mean, hopefully my movie moves forward and I'll have updates and we can talk about it.
Well, I would love that. Obviously, with still almost 700 people have hit in this chat room, we've all ever interested, and I'd love to know what's happening with it. After reading the script, it's a great script and it needs to be done. And we definitely want to encourage that. So, Miss Nader, I know that you were there feeling bad for your internet issues in and out. And she's got a show coming up here, so hopefully she won't have that problem during her show next, coming after this. And Kamran, it's such a pleasure to have you with me to talk about this, something that I hold close to me for many reasons. And so
there's a reason I think she wanted you to do this. I know you're connected to Norma Jean as well, and I know you're on this journey too, and she wanted you to let people know about this because I know she's part of your life.
Yes, very much so. So I'm going to bring Nader in here to say her goodbyes as well as we end the show here. And I hate to leave with so many people still here, but you guys have all been awesome. For all
I
of
hope
you,
people like it. The chat's kind of quiet. I hope people like today's talk.
Yes, they do. They're lurking in there. We get that to where we have people that are just watching and not talking, which is fine. I like that as well.
I think it's sinking in.
Yes. It's been pretty active, the chat, and I apologize for anybody that I've missed. And thank you for all of those who are here. And I'm looking for the chat. Sorry to see if I missed anything else. Miss Netter, would you like to end on anything here? Let me unmute you.
To have Netter, yeah.
You're muted. I don't know if we're pushing the button at the same time. But
can we get Netter to do sign language? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. So she's trying here.
Yeah, no, she's fine.
But anyway, she's got Troy's in here discussing what she's going to be doing here tonight. She's going to be interviewing my newest taco cat here, Curtis. So next here. So thank you for that. And let's see. What else was I going to say? I had something else I was going to mention, but okay. Yeah, I like to end on this beautiful picture of her. Just
Yeah, it's a lovely picture.
A lovely picture. All her pictures are lovely though, but I still have that negative. I think I showed you that negative.
Oh yeah, that's incredible. That's very valuable. She has a negative of one of the most famous shots around the history, and you have the negative of it. I mean, that's worth thousands of dollars.
From the photographer, yeah. Yeah, I have saved that, and I'll probably keep that one. But anyway, thank you guys for being here. I'm going to be coming back as much as possible to do some live shows more because I love hanging out with you all. And thank you, Kamran, again for taking the time to be with me on here and Miss Knitter Frozen. So no worries. And yes, I will. I promise I will be doing more. And thank you. PJ says. So Zach's, thank you, Rod. Everybody, Andy Masterson, thank you for hopping in here. Dr. O for helping me backstage. Everybody, anyway, I don't want to keep you guys much longer. You guys have so much to do, but thank you, Miss Lady Mist, and anybody else I've missed. I'm so sorry, Sci-Fi Mommy, all you guys. Thank you, my wrenches. So anyway, I will let you go for the evening. Have a wonderful evening, guys. Please be good to each other, especially yourself. As I'm learning, is that you got to take care of yourself first and foremost before you can take care of others. And in that process, if you can go rescue a pet as well, that'd be great. But you guys take care. We'll see you next time live, and I'll probably be doing some meditation ones here soon. So have a nice evening. I'm looking for my oh, I guess I could use my glasses. Looking for my outro. But I have to update, so bear with my outro as I have okay, outro. Here we go. Good night, guys.
Wanna leave this town. I'm saying, love it if you wanna go, I'm down.